This is a WMUR Commitment 2020 special in partnership with the New Hampshire Institute of Politics. Conversation with the candidate. Tonight, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand.
Good evening and welcome to our Conversation with the Candidate series. I'm Adam Sexton and our guest this evening is U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York. Tonight we'll be getting to know Senator Gillibrand and where she stands on key issues. At the start of our show, I'll be asking the candidate some questions, and then after a break, we'll have our studio audience ask their questions in a town hall format. But before we begin with that, let's take a quick look at the candidate's biography. Kirsten Gillibrand was born in Albany, New York in 1966 and graduated from the Emma Willard School in Troy, New York, the first all-women's high school in the U.S. She then went to Dartmouth College here in New Hampshire and obtained her law degree from UCLA. Gillibrand served as a law clerk on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, then worked as an attorney in New York City before becoming special counsel at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. She then moved to upstate New York and in 2006 launched a bid to unseat a longtime Republican in the U.S. House. Gillibrand won, served a term in Congress, before being appointed to the U.S. Senate, the seat vacated when Hillary Clinton resigned to be Secretary of State. She was elected in a special election for the seat and won re-election in 2012 and 2018. Gillibrand was the first U.S. Senator from New York in 40 years to join the Agriculture Committee, and as a member of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, she has pushed the efforts to address perfluorochemical contamination in drinking water. Gillibrand lives in Brunswick, New York, with her husband and two sons. Senator Gillibrand, thank you so much for joining us on Conversation with the Candidate.
Thank you.
So there are so many candidates in this race, and the easy way to break it down is there are the very progressive candidates and perhaps those leaning more towards the middle of the road. Where do we find you?
I am a common sense candidate that finds common ground between anyone. What I'm known for is getting elected in New York in the red places, the blue places, and the purple places. I have the highest vote percentage in the history of the state at 72%. And I just won back 18 counties that had gone to Trump in 2016. So I know how to bring people together, and I actually know how to get things done. I find common ground with Republicans every year, and I pass legislation. In the last Congress, I passed 18 bills that President Trump signed into law. He does not know he signed my bills into law, but he did.
We saw what a slog it was to get health care through in 2009. Are candidates being intellectually honest with voters when they say we can do Medicare for all, we can do climate change, we can do campaign finance reform, when it's so hard just to pass one thing?
Yes, I think the American people want health care as a right and not a privilege. They don't think it's a commodity that you should have to be able to afford to actually be able to have access to. And so I believe people should buy into Medicare at a price they can afford, a percentage of income, 4 or 5%, and have a 4 or 5 year transition period where people get to choose it. And over time, 4 or 5% of your income is much less than you're paying today. So more people will buy in because Medicare is better. It's got more coverage. I'd make sure the reimbursement rates were accurate, and I'd make sure we got the lowest rate for drugs to make it affordable from the drug companies. And then that's how you get to not only single payer, but health care as a right that's universal and permanent. I ultimately want to make it an earned benefit, just like Social Security, and we know how well that works. So I believe it's possible, and I think that's common ground amongst a lot of Americans to allow us to create competition with a not-for-profit option to get us to single payer.
Do you believe this country is as divided as it would appear on social media and cable news?
Well, we know that President Trump has really spent his presidency dividing America, dividing us on every racial line, religious line, socioeconomic line, and it's making us less safe and a weaker country. This country is not known for being afraid of one another or being afraid of our neighbors. In fact, what makes this country strong is when we treat others the way we want to be treated, to care about the least among us. And those are our values, and those have been lost under President Trump. So I'm running for president because I will take on the battles that other people won't. I will bring people together to get things done. I have a common sense approach that actually works. I pass big bills like Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal, and small bills like the last Congress where I got more money for rural broadband. It's what the country needs. I think this country could do a lot with a working mom in the White House instead of a misogynist. And I think we need someone who's going to bring us back together again.
There is undoubtedly a crisis at the southern border now with the number of migrants who are coming there. Some in your party have compared to the detention centers where they're being held to concentration camps. Do you agree with that characterization, and what would you be doing as president to address that crisis?
I believe separating children from their parents at the border is inhumane. I think it is contrary to our values as a country, anti-American, and we can do much better. Democrats are not afraid of investing in border security. In fact, I would invest in border security, the anti-terrorism cross-border criminal activity, the cross-border gun trafficking, human trafficking, and drug trafficking. President Trump has diverted money away from that, Customs and Border Patrol and Homeland Security initiatives, and actually spent the money in for-profit prisons. I would not be locking up mothers and children in for-profit prisons. I would create a community-based processing system where families seeking asylum who appear at a border crossing, they will be given a lawyer, a court date, and have a community-based response. I would give them real judges to have a proper asylum system, and I would make sure it was a humane process. I would put that whole process back under the Department of Justice, where it used to be. I would not have it diverting funds away from the Homeland Security missions of stopping terrorism and stopping human trafficking.
At the very least, though, don't you think it's perhaps unfair to conflate what's going on at the border to the Holocaust?
You know, it doesn't matter what you call it. What's happening at the border right now is unjust, it is inhumane, and it's morally wrong.
Senator Gillibrand, thank you for answering these questions.
Thank you.
Some tougher ones await back there with the town hall audience. And coming up after the break, we will bring our studio audience into this conversation. Do stay with us.